He takes the form of a huge black dog and prowls along dark lanes and lonesome field footpaths where, although his howling makes the hearer's blood run cold, his footfalls make no sound. You may know him at once, should you see him, by his fiery eye, for he has but one, and that, like a cyclops's, is in the middle of his head. But such an encounter might bring you the worst of luck. It is even said that to meet him is to be warned that your own death will occur before the end of the year. So you will do well to shut your eyes if you hear him howling. Shut them even if you are uncertain whether it is the voice of the dog fiend or the voice of the wind that you hear. W.A. Dutt, from his 1901 book, Highways and Byways of East Anglia. That was a description of the legendary black dog known as Black Shuck. Welcome to Spooky Ass Shit. I am your host, Eric Dwinnells, and tonight we are talking about black dogs. This week's episode is a little bit late getting to you guys. That is because I have not been feeling well. Every time I sat down to make my notes, I get them from various places online and through books that I own and stuff like that. And just every time I started to look at them, I started getting this headache behind my eye. I just couldn't concentrate for more than like a half hour at a time. And all day Sunday, which is when I normally post the episodes, I hadn't even recorded it. And I said, oh man, I'm going to record it. I'm going to finish up these notes and I'm going to record it. I couldn't even finish the notes. So here it is, Monday evening. And I'm trying to get this done for you. Hopefully I'll post it tonight. If not tonight, if my headache comes back and I just can't look at his screen anymore, I apologize if it was a little bit later than that. But keep in mind, folks, I feel like shit. But here I am, talking about nonsense, just for you. Because I'm not feeling well, today's episode might be a little bit shorter than normal. But again, even if it is, just keep in mind, I'm only doing it because I want to bring you decent quality. I could rattle on about some nonsense and pad the show that way, but I'd rather just keep with the plans that I have, even if my notes are a little bit shorter than normal, and give you, a 25-minute decent episode instead of a 40-minute half-decent episode. So I thank you for being understanding. Anyway, a little bit of business to take care of. You might be thinking to yourselves, hey, Eric, when you started the show, you used to plug projects that you had going on a lot, and now we don't really hear about that. What's going on? Well, I did a set at Laugh Boston not too long ago, and I did mention that one time on the air, but I stopped kind of pushing it because I figured you guys didn't need to hear all the details of it to come see me do 5 minutes. And then really I've been focusing on my street performing ever since last fall when I did the Witchfinder in Salem. And I'm working on a new act, which I'll be premiering in Cambridge and Harvard Square not too long from now. So I'll tell you more about that when that happens. But if you're wondering when I'm going to get back on the proper stage, a theater stage, well, I can't announce anything just yet because we're still going over some things. We're still dotting the I's and crossing some T's and whatnot. But it sounds like it's going to be much sooner than I would have anticipated. So I can't talk about it just yet. But hold on, and hopefully by next week I'll be able to tell you exactly what's going on. But if you live on the North Shore of the great state of Massachusetts, just be prepared to rock. Hopefully. Of course, before we begin, I want to remind you to please subscribe, rate, and review the show on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, which I think is what they're calling it now, or Stitcher or iHeartRadio or YouTube, wherever you happen to be listening to the show. And I also would like to ask you to please, pretty please with sugar on top, share the show with all your friends. We always want more spookaroos to join the brigade. So please, if you could do that, it would be very helpful. And if you could write a review on iTunes or Apple Podcast or Stitcher or YouTube or any of those places, that would also be very helpful. The schematics work in such a way that you get more pushed the more people are talking about the show. So, sharing it via those websites, subscribing, rating, reviewing, all those things really, really help out. And it would really help make me feel even more enthused on days like this when I'm really not feeling well and it's late already and part of me just wants to say, there's no show this week. But I continue to do it because I feel like I've set up this, it's a small audience right now, growing every week, but small. But I feel like you're kind enough to listen to it, so I should be good enough to put it out on a regular basis, and that's what I'm trying to do. Some weeks we can't help it, but most of the time I want to be here for you, just like I hope you'll continue to be here for me. One way you can show that you're going to be there is by checking out the website, spookyas.com or spookyasshit.com. They both take you to the same place, and that is the show's blog page, where you can find pictures from this episode and every episode. You can listen to this episode and every episode. Sometimes there's outtakes that I post. Sometimes there's YouTube videos relating to what we're talking about, and 99% of the time there's pictures to go along with the episode that you'll want to check out. You can also find links to all of our social media. That is at spookyasshit on both Twitter and Instagram. And you can also like us on Facebook at facebook.com/spookyas. So if you would please do all of those things, I would really appreciate it. Our Twitter numbers and our Instagram numbers are pretty sad. Facebook is a little bit healthier because I think I've been pimping that more. But we got to get... I'm not good at Twitter. I got to be honest with you. I'm not good at Twitter or Instagram. I'm a little better with Instagram. I do post some fun photos here and there. But Twitter, I just... I can't think of like quick, witty little things to say. I'm a loudmouth and I talk a lot. 140 characters generally isn't enough for me. I'm working on it. Maybe I'll even find someone to farm it out to and they can really take control of it and make it more interesting than I'm able to. But go ahead and follow it anyway. At the very least, you won't be bothered all the time by a bunch of nonsense because I don't use it that much. Was that the worst plug ever? I think it might be. I'm asking you to follow something I don't even do. But please do it. If you do it, then I'll see that people are following it and I'll say, oh shit, I better actually do something with this. Maybe that'll be the kickstart that I need. Now, most of our stories tonight are set in jolly old England or the British Isles. And I want to apologize up front for anything that I might mispronounce. Believe it or not, I am not an expert on Gaelic or Old English or even just regular old UK English. For those of you who might be listening from other countries, yes, of course, England and the United States, we share a language, but there are some differences. And of course, I'm sure our friends over in the UK will tell us that they speak proper English, but it's just like here. Like if you talk to a Southerner, they talk different than someone from my part of the country. So they talk different than someone from California. So in England, people have their own words, their own phrases, and their own pronunciations of things. It's all over. So who's exactly 100% right? Probably none of us. We all make it up as we go along. I have been to England twice. However, of course, I didn't get to explore too much of it. They were school trips back in the day. Theater trips, to be more specific. So I saw most of London and Stratford-upon-Avon, which was lovely. And I think that's really as much as I saw. But I will say, our chaperones were very lax, and we were allowed to explore all of London on our own. We would just go down and take the tube, as they call it over there. That's their subway system. We call it the T here in Boston, but they're all subways. And I remember feeling that the tube was very easy to navigate. So I want to congratulate you, London, on your tube system. I was not intimidated by it. I found it very easy. We went all over the place. I do remember the only time we had trouble, we had a free day, and my friend Beans, we used to call him Beans because he looked like Mr. Bean from the TV show Mr. Bean, the English TV show. And I was obsessed with the rock band The Who back in those days. Still somewhat am, but I've moved on to other things since then, but I still love The Who. But this was about 30 years after it was cool to be into The Who, so I was kind of alone. But I know that they used to play around Shepherd's Bush, and there were these clubs and you know, some of their homes and stuff. So I wanted to do a pilgrimage out that way. But we had these cards that allowed us to get on the tube, and I guess our card really didn't let us go that far. But I don't know. The policeman said, well, or the transit authority, whatever you call them over there, I don't know. said it was cool, like this time, it's fine, just go ahead, just be careful. Apparently it's a rough part of town. I don't know. But we didn't get too far. We walked a few blocks and realized we didn't know where a goddamn thing was. So just kind of turned around and went back, fearing that we would get too lost. But we didn't. We made it back. Had a good time. Loved it. London was great. Lots of fun. I enjoy you guys. And again, I apologize for any mispronunciations. It is not intentional, of course. And don't get too hung up on it. Or you can go fuck yourself. Cheers, mate. I believe that I've mentioned on the show before that I have a cat. Her name is Emma. She's walking around right now. Calico. And I love my cat, and I love cats in general. I'm an animal lover in general. But the truth is, if I could have a dog, I would have a dog. I'm just not home enough. And I don't want to give up my life to take care of a dog, come running home and have to, I'm just out too much. I'm a man about town, baby. You know how it is. But I love dogs. I grew up with dogs. I always had dogs growing up. Dogs are awesome. Man's best friend and all that. But the dogs we're talking about tonight, not so much. Now, as I said before, the phenomena is widely known as the black dog. However, just so you know, the dog doesn't always have to be black in color. Black could sometimes just refer to the ominous things that it brings about and the warnings and the death that it can leave in its wake sometimes. So what is this black dog phenomena? The apparition known as the black dog is a name given to an entity found primarily in the folklore of the British Isles. These dogs appear on lonely country roads, ancient highways, bridges, crossroads, churchyards, and beaches. They are most often said to be a harbinger of death or disaster, though there have been some stories of black dogs guiding lost travelers to safety or even bringing good luck. They're generally described as either a larger than normal dog, but not like freakishly large, but sometimes they are described as being as large as horses. So there's quite a range. It often has large, glowing eyes. Some of the more famous black dogs have been given names such as Hairy Jack, Skriker, Padfoot, the Churchyard Beast, Shug Monkey, Kusi, Gallytrot, Keppelwaite, Moth Dog, Hateful Thing, Swooning Shadow, Boggy Beast, Geitish, Grut Dog, Old Road, Trabensia, and Dip. No one is sure where the idea of the black dog comes from, though in the mythology of the Western world, it is very common to see this type of hound guarding the entrance to the underworld. The association between dogs and death is thought to be based on the scavenging habits of dogs. It could be a leftover in belief of the wild hunt. In mythology, the Norse god Odin would lead a group of hunters on a wild hunt that would rampage through the land, and you would see these wild dogs running alongside these hunters. Although the hunters are not often reported, we still get tales of the dogs. Perhaps these black dogs wandered off from the group during a wild hunt, and thus they are trapped here on Earth. Speaking of wild hunt, I wouldn't bother you telling you this next tale, except that just about everything you read about black dogs mentions it, and it is the inspiration for the famous Sherlock Holmes tale, The Hound of Baskervilles, which certainly involves a supposed spectral dog. But for the record, I would state that although this next story contains phantom hounds, it is really a wild hunt story as opposed to a true black dog story. Then again, a good story is a good story. So, for your consideration, here it is. This is the story of Richard Cabell and the Howls of the Damned. In the 17th century, there lived a man named Richard Cabell. Cabell was an avid hunter, but he was more renowned for being a, quote, monstrously evil man. He was known for all sorts of unspecified immoral behavior, and there was even a rumor that he had sold his soul to the devil. Some of his contemporaries believed that he had murdered his wife. To the relief of all who knew him, Cabell's attitude was greatly improved by his sudden death on July 5th, 1677. He died and was laid to rest in the graveyard of the Holy Trinity Church at Buckfastleigh. The night of his interment saw a pack of phantom hounds come baying across the moor to howl at his tomb. From that night on, he could be found leading the phantom pack across the moors, usually on the anniversary of his own death. If the pack were not out hunting, they could be found running around the graves, howling and shrieking. In an attempt to lay his soul to rest, the villagers built a large building around his tomb. And to be doubly sure that he would not get out and haunt the town once again, a huge slab was placed over his grave. As I said, that story is supposed to have inspired The Hounds of Baskerville by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. The Hounds of Baskerville, originally published in serial form between 1901 and 1902, was about an aristocratic English family believed to have been cursed by a phantom hound. This hound was particularly vicious. It had allegedly attacked and killed several family members. Famed detective Sherlock Holmes was asked to investigate and, well, I wouldn't want to ruin the ending for you. Now we're going to move on to some famous cases of legit black dog encounters. Like I said before, the last story was really more of a wild hunt story. These are the real deal. These are some of the most famous of the black dogs that we're about to talk about. First up, the Barghest. Famously said to haunt northern England, the Barghest is said to be able to shapeshift and take many forms. Or perhaps the locals were seeing different creatures and declaring it one and the same. Unlike most black dogs, he is not simply a messenger of death, but a bringer of it. He is known to go out into the night and find lonely travelers to have for his dinner. One particular spot is very well known for being the home of the Barghest, in his hound form at least. It is in a remote area known as Troller's Gate. The area got its name due to the troll said to live there, although the troll may have been forced out by the Barghest, since he is hardly mentioned these days. But belief in the Barghest and the evil it can bring remained. Although the Barghest lives in Troller's Gate, he is known to travel to find victims. One of his favorite stomping grounds is the city of York, where he will search for people wandering down the city's narrow alleyways, locally called Snickleways. Once the Barghest has found a suitable target, he attacks, ripping his victims to shreds. In the unspecified time known as back in the day, one man sought to end this terror. He planned to travel up to Troller's Gate, the very home of the Barghest, and perform a magic ritual that would get rid of the great beast once and for all. When the day came, the man steeled his courage, telling townsfolk that he was going to summon the Barghest. Then, using his secret occult ritual, he would banish the fiend. There is no record of the town's reaction, but they must have at the very least been curious, because they went to Troller's Gate looking for the man the next day. And they found him. Or what was left of him. The man had been torn asunder. Presumably, his ritual was unsuccessful. Let us move on to the Isle of Man. On the Isle of Man stands Peel Castle, which was built in the 11th century, and since that time, the guards of the castle had been reporting a strange nightly visitor. A black phantom spaniel. This shaggy apparition was seen in every room of the castle on various occasions, but it always ended up strolling into the guard's chamber, where it would curl up by the fire. Inhabitants of the castle were frightened by the dog at first, but, unlike most other black dogs, this one did not seem to be bringing death and destruction with it. So they let the spectral beast be, and, over time, grew less frightened of him. They even gave him a name, Moddey Dhoo. Moddey would arrive the same way every night. He would walk up a tunnel that led from the captain of the guard's apartment, under a churchyard, and up into the castle proper. He would leave the same way each morning as the sun started to rise. One night, one of the guards of the castle had a bit too much to drink. He started drunkenly boasting that he was not afraid of Moddey Dhoo, in the least. To prove it, he said he would lock up the castle gates alone and walk down Moddey's tunnel to deliver the keys back to the captain. The other guards laughed it off, reminding him that it was not even his turn to lock the gates. And locking the gates required 2 guards. There was protocol to be followed. But this guard, of course, had been emboldened by a strong helping of the liquid courage. So he was not going to give up on his plan, no matter how foolhardy. When the time was right, he snatched up the keys and did exactly as he said he would, locking up the castle gates alone. With the job finished, now all that remained was to return the keys to the captain of the guard's apartment. Though, of course, to get there, he would have to travel through the tunnel most frequently used by the phantom hound, Moddey Dhoo. He entered the tunnel, reminding himself in a loud voice that he was not afraid, and perhaps he wasn't. At first. We don't know exactly what happened in the tunnel, but the other guards reported hearing a series of terrifying noises coming from its direction. As the guards stood to go and investigate, our drunken adventurer came running out of the tunnel and into the chamber of the guards. He was terrified and out of breath, but he showed no signs of bodily injury. His fellow guards asked what had happened in the tunnel, but the man just collapsed, unable to say a single word about what had happened and what had terrified him so. He died 3 days later. It didn't take long for the guards to reconsider their feelings towards Moddey Dhoo. After all, they couldn't allow a beast with such power to wander freely in the castle any time it pleased. What if it turned all the guards insane with fright? So they sealed up the tunnel Moddey used to get into the castle, and the phantom was never seen again. Well, not in the guards' chambers, at least. Some say Moddey still roams the countryside to this very day. Now we're going to discuss what is perhaps the most famous of the Black Dogs. I'm talking about the one and only
Black Shuck! Black Shuck!
Black Shuck. Yes, Black Shuck is probably the most infamous of all Black Dog apparitions. He has been reported causing various kinds of mischief all over East Anglia. His story mostly follows the familiar Black Dog formula. To see the Black Shuck means death or illness will be coming to you or someone you love soon. But in some stories, Black Shuck takes these matters into his own paws. Although not the first reported sighting, here is the most infamous story about Black Shuck. On August 4th, 1577, in Blythburgh, parishioners piled into the Holy Trinity Church to worship and to seek shelter from the terrible storm that was raging outside. As the congregation knelt down and began to pray, a huge clap of thunder rattled the building, and its doors flew open. As they did, Black Shuck himself raced into the church. He ran up the aisle at such a great pace that 2 men near the altar were caught in the terrible wind the speeding hound left in his wake. The wind was so strong that it turned both men's heads so fast they snapped their necks and died right then and there. Black Shuck stood upon the altar and barked up at the steeple, which then collapsed through the roof of the church, and the church caught on fire. As the steeple fell, Black Shuck clawed the door and ran into the night. The church was rebuilt, and much of the original building was salvaged, including the door Black Shuck is said to have exited through. It remains there to this day, and legend has it that the marks left by Shuck's terrible paws are still to be found on the door. An interesting follow-up to this story. In May of 2014, the bones of a very large dog were excavated at Leaston Abbey in Suffolk, and it is believed that these may be the bones of the beast which figure into the Black Shuck legend. But carbon dating of the bones has very unhelpfully indicated a date of either 1650 to 1690, 1730 to 1810, or sometime post-1920. The fuck? That song you just heard playing is the song Black Shuck by the English band The Darkness, from their, 2003, 2004, somewhere around there, album, Permission to Land. Now, those are the most famous black dog stories, but the UK by no means holds a monopoly on the black dog phenomena. There are similar stories in many places of the world, especially the Western world. But what I want to talk about, of course, are the black dogs in our very own backyard, right here in the USA. Our black dog story, however, comes with an optimistic twist. How very American. The black dog of the hanging hills of the great state of Connecticut has been seen by Yankees as far back as the early 1800s. Unlike most phantom dogs, this pup is downright friendly and actively engages the people it comes across in play. He shows no outward sign of being anything other than a normal dog, except he leaves no footprints where he treads and he makes no sounds. Now here's the twist to the story. Seeing most black dogs is a sure sign of impending doom. But in the hanging hills, seeing the black dog once is considered good luck. But beware, seeing it twice is a sign that sorrow will soon enter your life. If you see the friendly little pup a third time, I hope you have your affairs in order, for it means your own death is imminent. Our final tale is perhaps not a true, traditional black dog story, but I'm sure you're going to find it intriguing just the same. Beginning in the summer of 1976, New Yorkers were terrorized by a mad gunman targeting young couples in their cars. The killer wrote several notes to the police in which he called himself the Son of Sam. After taking the lives of at least 6 victims and injuring 8 more, the notorious Son of Sam was finally caught and his true identity revealed. His name was David Berkowitz. During questioning, Berkowitz claimed that his neighbor's dog was one of the reasons that he killed. He claimed that the dog demanded the blood of pretty young girls. He said that the Sam mentioned in his letters was a reference to his former neighbor, Sam Carr. Berkowitz claimed that Carr's dog, Harvey, was possessed by an ancient demon, and that it had issued irresistible commands that Berkowitz must kill people. Harvey the dog, it may be worthy to note, was a black lab. That is it for our show today. I think I powered through. I think I did all right. Write in and let me know what you thought. Hopefully, here's the problem, gang. I hope to have more guests in the future, obviously. But remember that top secret project I told you about? If that ends up happening, I'm going to be extremely, extremely busy for about the next month, a little bit over a month. And it's going to be hard to get people in here at a time that works for both me and them. So you might just get a bunch of solo episodes for the next month. But I'm trying to get people in. We'll see. But this project really will take up a lot of my time. In the meantime, I encourage you once again, check out the website, spookyas.com. Find links to all of our social media. I would especially like to point out Twitter this week. We are at SpookyAssShit on Twitter. And that's ass with 2 S's, ASS. And once again, please subscribe, rate, review wherever you listen to the show. And you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/spookyas. We're all out of show for this time. I powered through the little engine that could, and I brought you slightly under-timed episode, but like I said, top quality as opposed to quantity. So go cuddle up with your dog if you have him, especially if you happen to have a little black pooch. And until next time, don't be afraid.